addition to jobless claims this morning, other economic reports indicating how the U.S. economy will fare going into 2022 have also been released. Moments ago, the government released data on jobless claims, personal income, consumer spending, core inflation, and durable goods, among other things. And when combined, all these reports are going to take a closer look at everything from the labor market to how much you are earning to what you are buying. Joining us now to discuss the impact of all these data points is the former director of the Troubled Asset Relief Program, Lori Bettinger. Also, the managing partner and chief development officer at WaveCapital Partners, Garrett Boorojian. Lori and Garrett, it's great to see you both. Welcome to Morning Rush. So, Lori, let's go ahead and start with you because there's a lot of data to comb through. What do these reports indicate about the economic state of the average American?
Well, thanks so much for having me. To me, I think we're seeing pretty solid economic news come out. You know, it's been a really interesting, well, I mean, I think you could say an interesting past year and a half, but in the past couple of weeks, as you know, Omicron has just really crept up on us. There's been this sort of big waiting. What does that mean? You know, what could it mean for the labor markets, for inflation, for consumer spending, consumer confidence? And it feels like it's not having this immediate impact. I mean, the thing that I'm sort of was impressed to see was that the jobless claims were so flat, as we just heard, you know, the same as last week. Even that 4-week average is really right at this 205,000 number. I think, you know, we're seeing the continuing claims are really right where they were, you know, maybe within a couple, within 100,000 claims going into the pandemic in March of 2020. So this summer with Delta, when that, you know, started to, you know, really creep up, I think that we started to see this pull back, you know, the claims started to go up a little bit. And, you know, the current numbers aren't really showing that yet. I mean, again, we're early in this wave, but I don't think we're seeing anything sort of catastrophic at this point.
So, Garrett, let's bring you into the conversation. Has anything here stood out to you? And how do you think all these numbers, this data dump that we just got, how does it square with what the president had to say in his speech yesterday?
Well, thank you so much, Veronica, for having me this morning. Well, President Biden, he's pretty adamant about touting that, you know, he created, or his administration created 6 million jobs this year. Unemployment rate is at 4.2%. And when we think about the latest jobless claim numbers being at 205,000, 206,000 last week, and the 52-year low earlier this month at 184,000, I mean, those are great numbers. Obviously, you have to take into consideration how many people have left the labor force due to various reasons coming from last year's pandemic, and, you know, people getting sick or having to take, you know, medical leave because of the virus or for other factors. But I think that we're very encouraged to see if President Biden can work with Senator Joe Manchin and Democrats and Republicans to pass the Build Back Better bill, because President Biden feels that with the infrastructure law and Build Back Better, it will help reduce inflation, and he's pretty adamant about that looking forward to in 2022.
So I think that the key takeaways here, Lori, are that unemployment is at 4.2%. The labor market is strong right now, but inflation is obviously still a huge concern. Many Americans are saying that this is their biggest concern right now outside of COVID. So how concerned do you think Americans should be as they move into the new year?
I think they should be concerned. Should they, you know, run out and spend all of their savings right now because they're worried that, you know, the value isn't going to be there, you know, in a few months? No. I think, you know, and clearly, I think it's hard to find a segment of the economy right now where prices don't seem like they're rising. And I think everyone feels impacted in different ways, you know, whether it's going to the grocery store, if someone's, you know, trying to, you know, get new housing arrangement, buy a car, you know, you're seeing higher prices. But I do think we've heard a lot of steps being taken to address this. You know, we've heard the Federal Reserve talk about what they're going to be doing next year. We've heard a lot about all these efforts to reduce pressure on the supply chain to the extent that, you know, sort of there aren't enough goods to meet customer demand, and that's what's driving prices. But it does appear to be an issue, and I think as long as we continue to see this mismatch between employers looking to hire people and people who aren't returning to the job market for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, fear about COVID, childcare issues, there's so many issues that have been with us these past, you know, almost 2 years now. I think as long as those that mismatch is there, we're still going to see pressures on certainly wages to rise. And, you know, when companies are having to pay more to hire people, whether it's a restaurant or a manufacturer, you know, they have to raise their own prices to to address that. And so I think that inflation is with us for a bit, but right now it feels like it's something that affects everyone, but doesn't need to be something that, I think keeps the average customer up at night.
Garrett, I just wanted to get your response to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you think of the cost over living adjustment, COLA, I think that, with higher wages, it's incentivizing workers to, make a good, decent living. But with higher prices, they're having to be able to justify those wages just so average Americans could afford to make a decent living and also live a quality of life. And I think that, if we see a reduction in inflation come 2022, if the Fed raises rates, employers would probably be locked into paying their workers that amount. But, it remains to be seen, with inflation, because it's all about the immediate. Average Americans, everybody is feeling the effects in their pockets, in their bank accounts. And I think that when you think about President Biden's poll numbers being in the high 30s, low 40s, teetering around those marks, he is hoping that he could project Build Back Better so average Americans and people at home can feel that he's delivering on his promises, and he feels that inflation coming down and working with Congress to project to the American people that inflation is not transitory, even though that it was touted as transitory. But obviously we see that it's going to be a conundrum going into 2022. What will be the case as it comes to inflation?
Yeah, something that we are all watching very closely. Former director of the Troubled Asset Relief Program, Lori Bettinger, and managing partner and chief development officer at WaveCapital Partners, Garrett Boorojian. Big thank you to you both. Thanks so much for being with us this morning, and happy holidays to both of you.